There's a document in the CIA reading room, 14 pages, typewritten in 1957. It sat behind a classification stamp for 42 years. Nobody outside the intelligence community could read it until August 24th, 1999. The document number is CIA RDP 78, and I've linked it in the description. Do not click it yet. Watch this first, then go read it yourself. And on page 9, a CIA analyst describes something that should disturb anyone who cares about history. He describes a government ordering the complete rewriting of an entire nation's past. He does not call it revision. He does not call it reinterpretation. He uses a very specific word. He calls it falsified. The nation whose history was falsified is Tartaria. Before I go any further, I want to talk to you directly. To those of you who have been here since the beginning, and to those of you who just found this channel last week, thank you. I never expected this to grow the way it has. When I started, I was just someone who could not stop pulling at threads that nobody else seemed to want to touch. And now, there are thousands of you pulling with me. That means more than I can put into words. So, thank you for watching, for sharing, for leaving comments that push me to dig even deeper. Now, I also read the comments that say, this channel is just made-up stories, that none of this is real. And I want you to know something. Every single claim I make on this channel is researched, verified against primary sources, cross-referenced with dates, locations, and documents. I do not make things up. I am actually building a website right now that will contain full citations for every video, every source, every document, every page number. It is coming soon. But in the meantime, everything I reference today, the CIA document, the encyclopedia entry, the historical records, you can verify all of it before this video ends. I am not asking you to believe me. I am asking you to check. Now, I need to be precise here because this is where most people in this space get it wrong. They screenshot one paragraph of this document, post it on social media, and declare victory. They never read what comes before. They never read what comes after. They strip the context and weaponize the quote. I am not going to do that. I'm going to walk through the entire document in context because the context makes it far worse than the screenshot suggests. The document is titled National Culture Development Under Communism. It opens with a quote from a Bolshevik proclamation dated December 7, 1917. The proclamation was signed by Lenin and Stalin. It was addressed to all Muslim peoples of Russia and the East, Tatars of the Vular and Crimea, Kiris and Sarts of Siberia and Turkestan, Turks and Tatars of Transcaucasia, Chechens and mountain peoples of the Caucasus. The promise was explicit. Your beliefs and customs, your national and cultural institutions are forever free and inviolate. Organize your national life in complete freedom. This is your right. That was a promise. The rest of the 14 pages is a meticulous accounting of how every syllable of that promise was broken. Mosques destroyed, languages corrupted or suppressed, Muslim literary works banned, unless they praise Russia and Russians. Folk epics that had survived centuries were reclassified. The Kazakh epic Kablandi Badier, once celebrated as a monument of national literature, became what Soviet authorities called low patter, extolling violence and brigandage. An entire culture's literary heritage made illegal unless it served Russian interests. Then page 9, August 9, 1944. While the world was focused on the Allied advance through France, the Central Committee of the Communist Party in Moscow issued a very different kind of directive, not a military order, a historical one. It was sent to the Tartar Provincial Committee. The instruction was to proceed to a scientific revision of the history of Tartaria to liquidate serious shortcomings and mistakes of a nationalistic character committed by individual writers and historians. The CIA analyst writes what follows without hesitation or diplomatic softening. In other words, Tartar history was to be rewritten. Let us be frank. It was to be falsified in order to eliminate references to great Russian aggressions and to hide the facts of the real course of Tartar-Russian relations. And then the paragraph that other channels always cut off. The analyst continues, and this was no isolated case. In every Muslim area within the USSR, historians have rewritten history on orders of the Communist Party. The goal was to distort the facts so that Russians appear always in a good light. And one final line that lands like a door closing. Histories which present the facts truthfully have been withdrawn and destroyed, not archived, not relocated to a different library, destroyed. Let me be careful about what I am claiming and what I am not. Fact checkers have correctly pointed out that this document does not prove the existence of the Tartarian Empire as described in internet conspiracy theories. They are right. It does not. But here is what it does prove in the CIA's own words. A government ordered the history of a specific territory rewritten. A CIA analyst documented that order and called it falsification. Truthful histories were physically destroyed. And the CIA's own report about all of this was classified for over 4 decades. The question is not whether this proves everything people say online. The question is what was so dangerous about the history of Tartaria that it required falsification in the first place. So what was Tartaria? Forget the internet theories for a moment. Go to the source that existed 2 centuries before the internet, the Encyclopedia Britannica, not a modern edition, the first edition ever published. Edinburgh 1771. 3 volumes representing the pinnacle of Western encyclopedic knowledge. Volume 3, page 887. The entry on Tartary. It reads as follows. Tartary, a vast country in the northern parts of Asia, bounded by Siberia on the north and west. This is called Great Tartary. The Britannica then lists subdivisions. The Tartars of Astrakhan, Scassia, and Dagestan. The Khmuk Tartars between Siberia and the Caspian Sea, the Uzbek Tartars and Moguls north of Persia and India, those of Tibet northwest of China. And crucially, the Britannica identifies distinct political entities within this territory. Moscow Tartar with its capital in Tobolsk, Chinese Tartary bordering China, Independent Tarty with its capital in Samarkand. These are not vague labels for wilderness. These are territories with named capitals and described governments. And Moscow Tartary, according to the first encyclopedia ever published in the English language, was described as the largest country in the world. Today, if you type Tartaria into any search engine, the top result will tell you it never existed, that it was merely a geographic convenience, a catch-all label that European map makers used for land they did not understand. But you do not issue a directive from the Central Committee of the Communist Party to rewrite the history of a geographic convenience. You do not classify the CIA's report about that rewriting for 42 years of the territory was empty step and nothing more. Something about this history was worth the sustained effort of falsification across 2 centuries. And to understand what you need to look at what happened just 2 years after Britannica published that entry. September, a Don Ksak named Yin Pugachev raises an army along the Yike River. He was born around 1742 in a village called Tsimirskaya. He had fought in the 7 Years' War and the Russo-Turkish War before deserting the imperial army. He was arrested. He escaped. He was arrested again. He escaped again. He wandered for years among the Cossacks and old believers of the southern frontier, absorbing their grievances, studying their hunger for something different. And then he made a claim that would nearly bring down the Russian Empire. He declared himself to be the true Tsar Peter III. Catherine the Great's murdered husband risen and returned. What followed was not a peasant riot. Pugachev assembled forces that grew to over 100,000. Yea, Cossacks, Tatars, Bashkirs, peasants, factory workers, old believers, anyone with a reason to resist Catherine's rule. He did not simply amass a mob. He established a war college modeled on Catherine's own military structure. He built intelligence networks of messengers and spies. He recruited local priests and mullahs to write and distribute royal decrees in both Russian and Tartar. He captured the city of Kazan and burned it to the ground. He besieged the administrative capital of Orbo for 6 months. At his peak, he threatened Moscow itself. Catherine had to pull combat troops from her ongoing war against Turkey just to fight him. His territory stretched from the Volga to the Urals. Look at a map from 1771. That is the exact territory labeled Tartary. Catherine initially treated him as a joke. She placed a bounty of 500 rubles on his head, the kind of price you put on a petty criminal. Within a year, that bounty exceeded 28,000 rubles. By the summer of 1774, the largest peasant revolt in Russian history was burning across the largest territory described by the world's leading encyclopedia. In August 1774, Pugachev's forces were finally crushed near Tsaritsyn. 10,000 rebels killed or captured. In September, his own Cossacks betrayed him and delivered him in chains. He was transported to Moscow in an iron cage, interrogated for a month and sentenced. On January 10, 1775, Ilyin Pugachev was beheaded and quartered in Bolatna Square. Before a crowd, his body parts were displayed across the city, then burned. But Catherine did not stop there. And this is where the story stops being about a rebellion and becomes a story about something else entirely. Because Catherine did not just kill Pugachev. She tried to make him and everything he represented disappear from the surface of the earth. His house was burned to the ground. His village Zimmerea was renamed Piemkinskaya. The river where the rebellion started, the Yaik River, was renamed the Ural River. You have heard of the Ural River. You have never heard its original name because Catherine erased it from every map, every document, every conversation. The Yaik Cossacks became the Ural Cossacks. The city of Yitsky Gorodok became Uralsk. Even Pugachev's surviving family was forced to abandon their surname. They became the SYVS. And a decree that authorized all of this, dated January 13, 1775, stated its purpose in language so blunt it reads more like a confession than a legal document. The stated reason for renaming a river, a city, a village, an entire people was, and I'm quoting the actual decree, complete oblivion, not justice, not deterrence, complete oblivion. She named her intention out loud. You rename a river to achieve oblivion. You burn a house to prevent memory. You force a family to abandon their name. So even bloodlines forget. That is not how empires respond to criminals. That is how empires erase countries. I sat with this research for 3 full weeks before I could write a word of this script, not because the facts were difficult to find. Every detail I have described is mainstream history. Pugachev is in every Russian history textbook. Catherine's renaming campaign is documented in Britannica, in academic journals, in Russian state archives. None of this is secret or controversial among historians. What kept me staring at my notes in silence was the weight of what it all means together. Place Catherine's decree next to the 1944 Soviet directive next to the 1957 CIA report, because the pattern does not stop with Catherine. It repeats for 200 years against the same territory, using the same methods. After Catherine's Eurasia campaign, the Teritos history kept resurfacing. Historians kept writing about it. National heroes kept being celebrated by the peoples who lived there. In 1837, a Kazakh sultan named Kenisary Kasimov launched a 10-year uprising against Russian expansion. He was descended from the line of Genghis Khan. He was the last Khan of the Kazakhs. He fought for a decade across the exact same territory before his death in 1847. His people never forgot him. In 1943, the history of the Kazakh SSR was published, celebrating Kenisary among other national heroes. 2 years later, the Bolshevik Journal attacked the book for glorifying Kazakh military traditions and resistance to Russia. Then in 1947, a historian named Khan Betmakinov, the first Kazakh to earn a doctoral degree in history, published his work praising Kenisary. He received severe warnings from the Communist Party's Central Committee. By December 1950, Pravda itself published an article reclassifying Kenisary's 10-year liberation struggle as a reactionary feudal movement. Betmakinov was forced to rewrite his own doctrinal work. He changed his own conclusion from national hero to reactionary because the party demanded it. A historian rewrote his own research to say the opposite of what his evidence showed. Think about that. And it was not just Kenisar. Imam Shamil, the legendary leader of 25 years of Caucasian resistance against Russia, received identical treatment. The great Soviet encyclopedia itself reversed its earlier praise of his movement. What one edition had called a struggle for national liberation, the next edition relabeled as a fight for freedom for wolves, for freedom for backwardness, oppression, darkness. Museums across the borderlands were purged, art objects confiscated, dozens of folk epics officially denounced as reactionary. All of this documented by the same CIA analyst in 1957. All of it sealed behind a classification stamp until 1999. You can draw a single line through 2 centuries of Eurasia. 1771. The Britannica describes Tartary with subdivisions and capitals, calling Moscow Tartar the largest country in the world. 1773. The largest revolt in Russian history erupts across that exact territory. 1775. Catherine renames a river, burns a village, and orders complete oblivion. 1776, 1 year later. The United States of America declares independence. 1837 to 1847. Kenner's rebellion across the same lands. 1944. Moscow orders a history of Tartaria rewritten. 1957. The CIA documents the falsification and classifies its own report. 1999. That report is finally declassified. At every point on this 200-year timeline, the same territory is the target. And at every point, someone in power is rewriting what happened there. Now, consider the buildings not as proof of anything, as questions that remain open. Across the territories at historical maps labeled Tartary, structures exist whose construction narratives strain credibility. Star forts, geometrically precise fortifications with identical angular symmetry, have been cataloged in over 105 countries, more than 1,700 documented worldwide. Fort Bortange in the Netherlands, Gorikaku in Japan, Fort McHenry in Baltimore. Structures on different continents sharing geometric principles so consistent they look engineered by the same mind. They appear frequently in territories that overlap with historical Tartar maps. The World's Fair structures of 1893 in Chicago and 1915 in San Francisco were built to resemble ancient marble palaces, then demolished or burned within months of their exhibition. We are told they were temporary plaster structures created for display purposes. The photographs show columns, domes, and stonework that does not look temporary by any definition. Ornate government buildings appeared across America throughout the 1800s. A nation barely a century old was producing civic architecture that European capitals with 1,000 years of building tradition would struggle to surpass. Some of these buildings lack complete construction records. Many appeared during compressed timelines that raise their own questions. I am not telling you who built these structures. I'm asking whether the official histories of these territories deserve the same scrutiny we now apply to the maps and the documents. When a CIA analyst tells you that the history of these lands was falsified, it is not paranoia to wonder what else about them might be incomplete. Every claim in this video is independently verifiable. The CIA document is in their public reading room. The 1771 Britannica is scanned and available on the Internet Archive, hosted by the National Library of Scotland. Pugachev's rebellion occupies chapters in every major encyclopedia of Russian history. Catherine's renaming decrees are preserved in the Russian state archives. The Beck-Makinov case is published in academic journals and in Foreign Affairs magazine. You do not need to trust me. You can verify every single fact before this video ends. And that is what separates this from speculation. These are not my documents. They are theirs, written by the people who did the erasing, preserved in the archives of the institutions that carried out the orders. A CIA analyst in 1957 chose the word falsified. An empress in 1775 wrote, "Complete oblivion into law." An encyclopedia in 1771 described the largest country in the world. And today that country appears on no map anywhere on Earth. These are not my interpretations. They're the words of the people who made these decisions, preserved in their own handwriting, stamped with their own seals, filed in their own reading rooms. The river Catherine, renamed, still flows under the name she gave it. The territory of the Britannica, described, still exists under names other empires assigned. The histories that were withdrawn and destroyed are still gone. And the most unsettling thing about this story is not what was concealed. It is that they documented every step of the concealment, classified the documentation, and counted on the certainty that you would never bother to.